The Beast of Averoigne. This awesome story was written by the late and infamous horror writer Clark Ashton Smith. So grab your coffee, sit back, and enjoy the show. Part 1. The Deposition of Brother Jerome. I, a poor scrivener and the humblest monk of the Benedictine Abbey of Paragon, have been asked by our abbot Theophile to write down this record of a strange evil that is still rampant, still unquelled. And ere I have done writing, it may be that the evil shall come forth again from its lurking place, and again be manifest. We, the friars of Paragon, and all others who have knowledge of this thing, agree that its advent was coeval with the first rising of the red comet which still burns nightly, a flying balefire above the moonless hills. Like Satan's rutilant hair, trailing on the wind of Gehenna as he hastens worldward, it rose below the dragon in early summer, and now it follows the scorpion toward the western woods. Some say that the horror came from the comet, flying without wings to earth across the stars. And truly, before this summer of 1369 and the lifting of that red disastrous scourge upon the heavens, there was no rumor or legend of such a thing in all Averoigne. As for me, I must deem that the beast is a spawn of the seventh hell, a foulness born of the bubbling, flame-blent ooze, for it has no likeness to the beasts of earth, to the creatures of air and water, and the comet may well have been the fiery vehicle of its coming. To me, for my sins and unworthiness, was it first given to behold the beast. Surely the sight thereof was a warning of those ways which lead to perdition, for on that occasion I had broken the rule of Saint Benedict which forbids eating during a one-day's errand away from the monastery. I had tarried late after bearing a letter from Theophile to the good priest of Saint Zenobe, though I should have been back well before evensong. And also, apart from eating, I had drunk the mellow white wine of Saint Zenobe with its kindly people. Doubtless because I had done these things, I met the nameless night-born terror in the woods behind the abbey when I returned. The day had vanished, fading unaware, and the long summer eve without moon had thickened to a still and eldritch darkness ere I approached the abbey postern, and hurrying along the forest path, I felt an eerie fear of the gnarled hunchback oaks and their pit-deep shadows, and when I saw between their antic boughs the vengefully streaming fire of the new comet, which seemed to pursue me as I went, the goodly warmth of the wine died out, and I began to regret my truancy. For I knew that the comet was a harbinger of ill, an omen of death and Satanry to come. Now, as I passed among the ancient trees that tower thickly, growing toward the postern, I thought that I beheld a light from one of the abbey windows and was much cheered thereby. But going on, I saw that the light was near at hand, beneath a lowering bough beside my path, and moreover, it moved as with the flitting of a restless fen fire, and was wholly dissimilar to the honest glow of a lamp, lantern, or taper, and the light was of changeable color, being pale as a corpuscent, or ruddy as new-spilled blood, or green as the poisonous distillation that surrounds the moon. Then, with ineffable terror, I beheld the thing to which the light clung like a hellish nimbus, moving as it moved, and revealing dimly the black abomination of head and limbs that were not those of any creature wrought by God. The horror stood erect, rising to the height of a tall man, and it moved with the swaying of a great serpent, and its members undulated as if they were boneless. The round black head, having no visible ears or hair, was thrust forward on a neck of snakish length. Two eyes, small and lidless, glowing hotly as coals from a wizard's brazier, were set low and near together in the noseless face above the serrate gleaming of bat-like teeth. This much I saw, and no more ere the thing went past me with the strange nimbus flaring from venomous green to a wrathful red. Of its actual shape, and the number of its limbs, I could form no just notion. It uttered no sound, and its motion was altogether silent. Running and slithering rapidly, it disappeared in the bough-black night, among the antique oaks, and I saw the hellish light no more. I was nigh dead with fear when I reached the abbey and sought admittance at the postern. And the porter who came at last to admit me, after I had knocked many times, forbore to chide me for my tardiness when I told him of that which I had seen in the moonless wood. On the morrow, I was called before Theophile, who rebuked me sternly for my breach of discipline, and imposed a penance of day-long solitude. Being forbidden to hold speech with the others, I did not hear till the second morn of the thing that was found before nones in the wood behind Paragon, where I had met the nameless beast. The thing was a great stag which had been slain in some ungodly fashion, not by wolf or hunter or poacher. It was unmarked by any wound, other than a wide gash that had laid bare the spine from neck to tail, and the spine itself had been shattered and the white marrow sucked therefrom. But no other portion of the stag had been devoured. None could surmise the nature of the beast that slew and ravened in such a manner. But many, for the first time, began to credit my tale, which the abbot and the brothers had hitherto looked upon as a sort of drunken dream. Verily, they said, a creature from the pit was abroad, and this creature had killed the stag and had sucked the marrow from its broken spine. And I, aghast with the recollection of that loathly vision, marveled at the mercy of God which had permitted me to escape the doom of the stag. None other, it seemed, had beheld the monster on that occasion, for all the monks, save me, had been asleep in the dormitory, and Theophile had retired early to his cell. But during the nights that followed the slaying of the stag, the presence of this baleful thing was made manifest to all. Now, night by night, the comet greatened, burning like an evil mist of blood and fire, while the stars bleached before it and terror shadowed the thoughts of men. And in our prayers, from prime to evensong, we sought to deprecate the unknown ills which the comet would bring in its train. And day by day, from peasants, priests, woodcutters, and others who came to visit the abbey, we heard the tale of fearsome and mysterious depredations, similar in all ways to the killing of the stag. Dead wolves were found with their chines laid open and the spinal marrow gone, and an ox and a horse were treated in like fashion. Then, it would seem, the beast grew bolder, or else it wearied of such humble prey as deer and wolves, horses and oxen. At first it did not strike at living men, but assailed the helpless dead like some foul eater of carrion. 2 freshly buried corpses were found lying in the cemetery at St. Zenobi, where the thing had dug them from their graves and had laid open their vertebrae. In each case, only a little of the marrow had been eaten, but as if in rage or disappointment, the cadavers had been torn into shreds from crown to heel, and the tatters of their flesh were mixed inextricably with the rags of their cerements. From this it would seem that only the spinal marrow of creatures newly killed was pleasing to the monster. Thereafter the dead were not molested, but a grievous toll was taken from the living. On the night following the desecration of the graves, 2 charcoal burners, who plied their trade in the forest at a distance of no more than a mile from Paragon, were slain foully in their hut. Other charcoal burners dwelling nearby heard the shrill screams that fell to sudden silence, and peering fearfully through the chinks of their bolted doors, they saw anon in the gray starlight the departure of a black, obscenely glowing shape that issued from the hut. Not till dawn did they dare to verify the fate of their hapless fellows, who, they then discovered, had been served in the same manner as the wolves and other victims of the beast. When the tale of this happening was brought to the abbey, Theophile called me before him and questioned me closely anent the apparition which I had encountered. He, like the others, had doubted me first, deeming that I was frightened by a shadow or by some furtive creature of the wood. But after the series of atrocious maraudings, it was plain to all that a fiendish thing such as had never been fabled in Averoigne was abroad and ravening through the summer woods, and moreover it was plain that this thing was the same which I had beheld on the eve of my return from St. Zenobi. Our good abbot was greatly exercised over this evil, which had chosen to manifest itself in the neighborhood of the abbey, and whose depredations were all committed within a 5 hours' journey of Paragon. Pale from his over-strict austerities and vigils, with hollow cheeks and burning eyes, Theophile called me before him and made me tell my story over and over, listening as one who flagellates himself for a fancied sin. And though I, like all others, was deeply sensible of this hellish horror and the scandal of its presence, I marveled somewhat at the godly wrath and indignation of our abbot, in whom blazed a martial ardor against the minions of Asmodai. Truly, he said, there is a great devil among us that has risen with the comet from Malabolge. We, the monks of Paragon, must go forth with cross and holy water to hunt the devil in its hidden lair, which lies haply at our very portals. So, on the afternoon of that same day, Theophile, together with myself and 6 others chosen for their hardihood, sallied forth from the abbey and made search of the mighty forest for miles around, entering with lifted crosses by torchlight the deep caves to which we came, but finding no fiercer thing than wolf or badger. Also, we searched the vaults of the ruined castle of Fossus Flamme, which is said to be haunted by vampires, but nowhere could we trace the sable monster or find any sign of its lairing. Since then, the middle summer has gone by with nightly deeds of terror, beneath the blasting of the comet. Beasts, men, children, women have been done to death by the monster, which, though seeming to haunt mainly the environs of the abbey, has ranged afield even to the shores of the river Issoile and the gates of La Frenaille and Siems. And some have beheld the monster at night, a black and slithering foulness clad in changeable luminescence, but no man has ever beheld it by day. Thrice has the horror been seen in the woods behind the abbey, and once, by full moonlight, a brother peering from his window descried it in the abbey garden as it glided between the rows of peas and turnips, going toward the forest, and all agree that the thing is silent, uttering no sound, and is swifter in its motion than the weaving viper. Much have these occurrences preyed on our abbot, who keeps to his cell in unremitting prayer and vigil, and comes forth no longer, as was his wont, to dine and hold converse with the guests of the abbey. Pale and meager as a dying saint he grows, and a strange illness devours him as if with perpetual fever, and he mortifies the flesh till he totters with weakness, and we others, living in the fear of God and abhorring the deeds of Satan, can only pray that the unknown scourge be lifted from the land, and pass with the passing of the comet. Part 2. The Letter of Theophile to Sister Therese. To you, my sister in God as well as by consanguinity, I must ease my mind, if this be possible, by writing again of the dread thing that harbors close to Paragon. For this thing has struck once more within the abbey walls, coming in darkness and without sound or other ostent than the Phlegethonian luster that surrounds its body and members. I have told you of the death of Brother Jerome slain at evening in his cell, while he was copying an Alexandrian manuscript. Now the fiend has become even bolder, for last night it entered the dormitory, where the brothers sleep in their robes, girded and ready to arise instantly, and without waking the others, on whom it must have cast a Lethean spell, it took Brother Augustine, slumbering on his pallet at the end of the row. And the fell deed was not discovered till daybreak, when the monk who slept nearest to Augustine awakened and saw his body, which lay face downward with the back of the robe and the flesh beneath a mass of bloody tatters. On this occasion, the beast was not beheld by anyone, but at other times full often it has been seen around the abbey, and its craftiness and hardihood are beyond belief, except as those of an archdevil, and I know not where the horror will end, for exorcisms and the sprinkling of holy water at all doors and windows have failed to prevent the intrusion of the beast, and God and Christ and all the holy saints are deaf to our prayers. Of the terror laid upon Averoigne by this thing, and the bale and mischief it has wrought outside the abbey, I need not tell, since all this will have come to you as a matter of common report. But here, at Paragon, there is much that I would not have rumored publicly, lest the good fame of the abbey should suffer. I deem it an humiliating thing, and a derogation and pollution of our sanctity, that a foul fiend should have ingress to our halls unhindered and at will. There are strange whispers among the brothers, who believe that Satan himself has risen to haunt us. Several have met the beast even in the chapel, where it has left an unspeakably blasphemous sign of its presence. Bolts and locks are vain against it, and vain is the lifted cross to drive it away. It comes and goes at its own choosing, and they who behold it flee in irrestrainable terror. None knows where it will strike next, and there are those among the brothers who believe it menaces me, the elected abbot of Paragon, since many have seen it gliding along the hall outside my cell, and Brother Constantine, the cellarer, who returned late from a visit to Viona's not long ago, swears that he saw it by moonlight as it climbed the wall toward that window of my cell which faces the great forest. And seeing Constantine, the thing dropped to the ground like a huge ape and vanished among the trees. All it would seem save me have beheld the monster. And now, my sister, I must confess a strange thing, which above all else would attest the influential power of hell in this matter, and the hovering of the wings of Asmodai about Paragon. Each night, since the coming of the comet and the beast, I have retired early to my cell with the intention of spending the nocturnal hours in vigil and prayer, as I am universally believed to do. And each night a stupor falls upon me as I kneel before Christ on the silver crucifix, and oblivion steeps my senses in its poppy, and I lie without dreams on the cold floor till dawn. Of that which goes on in the abbey I know nothing, and all the brothers might be done to death by the beast, and their spines broken and sucked as is its invariable fashion without my knowledge. Haircloth have I worn, and thorns and thistle burrs have I strewn on the floor, to awake me from this evil and ineluctable slumber that is like the working of some orient drug. But the thorns and thistles are as a couch of paradisal ease, and I feel them not till dawn, and dim and confused are my senses when I awaken, and deep languor thralls my limbs. And day by day a lethal weakness grows upon me, which all ascribe to saintly pernuctations of prayer and austerity. Surely I have become the victim of a spell, and am holden by a baleful enchantment while the beast is abroad with its hellish doings. Heaven, in its inscrutable wisdom, punishing me for what sin I know not, has delivered me utterly to this bondage and has thrust me down the slough of a Stygian despair. Ever I am haunted by an eerie notion that the beast comes nightly to earth from the red comet which passes like a fiery wain above Averoigne, and by day it returns to the comet, having eaten its fill of that provender for which it seeks, and only with the comet's fading will the horror cease to harry the land and infest Paragon. But I know not if this thought is madness or a whisper from the pit. Pray for me, Therese, in my bewitchment and my despair, for God has abandoned me, and the yoke of hell has somehow fallen upon me, and naught can I do to defend the abbey from this evil. And I, in turn, pray that such things may touch you not nor approach you in the quiet cloisters of the convent at Siems. Part 3. The Story of Luc le Chaudronnier. Old age, like a moth in some fading arras, will gnaw my memories over soon, as it gnaws the memories of all men. Therefore I write this record of the true origin and slaying of that creature known as the Beast of Averoigne. And when I have ended the writing, the record shall be sealed in a brazen box, and that box be set in a secret chamber of my house at Siems, so that no man shall learn the dreadful verity of this matter till many years and decades have gone by. Indeed, it were not well for such evil prodigies to be divulged while any who took part in the happening are still on the earthward side of purgatory. And at present the truth is known only to me and to certain others who are sworn to maintain secrecy. The ravages of the beast, however, are common knowledge, and have become a tale with which to frighten children. Men say that it slew 50 people night by night in the summer of 1369, devouring in each case the spinal marrow. It ranged mostly about the Abbey of Paragon, and to Siems and Saint Zenobi and La Fortille de Nailly. Its nativity and lairing place were mysteries that none could unravel, and church and state were alike powerless to curb its maraudings, so that a dire terror fell upon the land and people went to and fro as in the shadow of death. From the very beginning, because of my own commerce with occult things and with the spirits of darkness, the baleful beast was the subject of my concern. I knew that it was no creature of earth or of the terrene hells, but had come with the flaming comet from ulterior space. But regarding its character and attributes and genesis, I could learn no more at first than any other. Vainly I consulted the stars and made use of geomancy and necromancy, and the familiars whom I interrogated professed themselves ignorant, saying that the beast was altogether alien and beyond the ken of sublunar devils. Then I bethought me of the ring of Ebon, which I had inherited from my fathers, who were also wizards. The ring had come down, it was said, from ancient Hyperborea, and it was made of a redder gold than any that the earth yields in latter cycles, and was set with a great purple gem, somber and smoldering, whose like is no longer to be found. And in the gem an antique demon was held captive, a spirit from pre-human worlds and ages, which would answer the interrogation of sorcerers. So, from a rarely opened casket, I brought out the ring of Avon and made such preparations as were needful for the questioning of the demon. And when the purple stone was held inverted above a small brazier filled with hotly burning amber, the demon made answer, speaking in a voice that was like the shrill singing of fire. It told me the origin of the beast, which belonged to a race of stellar devils that had not visited the earth since the foundering of Atlantis. And it told me the attributes of the beast, which in its own proper form was invisible and intangible to men, and could manifest itself only in a fashion supremely abominable. Moreover, it informed me of a method by which the beast could be banished, if overtaken in a tangible shape, and even to me, the student of darkness, the revelations were a source of horror and surprise. Musing on these dark matters, I waited among my books and braziers and alembics, for the stars had warned me that my intervention would be required in good time. Toward the end of August, when the great comet was beginning to decline a little, there occurred the lamentable death of Sister Therese, killed by the beast in her cell at the Benedictine convent of Zims. On this occasion the beast was plainly seen by late passers as it ran down the convent wall by moonlight from a window, and others met it in the shadowy streets or watched it climb the city ramparts, running like a monstrous beetle or spider on the sheer stone as it fled from Zims to regain its hidden lair. To me, following the death of Therese, there came privily the town marshal, together with a priest from the household of the Bishop of Zims, and the two, albeit with palpable hesitation, begged my advice and assistance in the laying of the beast. "You, Messire le Chaudronnier," they said, "are reputed to know the arcanic arts of sorcery, and the spells that summon or dismiss evil demons and other spirits. Therefore, in dealing with this devil, it may be that you shall succeed where all others have failed. Not willingly do we employ you in the matter, since it is not seemly for the Church and the law to ally themselves with wizardry. But the need is desperate, lest the demon should take other victims, and in return for your aid we can promise you a goodly reward of gold, and a guarantee of lifelong immunity from all inquisition and prosecution which your doings might otherwise invite. The Bishop of Zims and the Archbishop of Vionis are privy to this offer, which must remain secret." "I ask no reward," I replied, "if it be in my power to rid Averoigne of this scourge, but you have set me a difficult task, and I must prepare myself for the undertaking, in which I shall require certain aid. All assistance that we can give you shall be yours to command," they said. "Men-at-arms shall attend you, if need be, and all doors shall be opened at your request. We have consulted Theophile, the abbot of Paragon, and the grief-smitten brother of the lately slain Therese, who is most zealous for the laying of the fiend and will admit you to the abbey. The horror seems to center thereabout, and 2 of the monks have been done to death, and the abbot himself, it is rumored, has been haunted by the beast. Therefore, it may be that you will wish to visit Paragon." I reflected briefly and said, "Go now, but send to me, an hour before sunset, 2 men-at-arms with horses and a 3rd steed, and let the men be chosen for their valor and discretion, for this very night I shall visit the abbey." Now, when the priest and the marshal had gone, I spent several hours in making ready for my journey. It was necessary, above all other things, to compound a certain rare powder that had been recommended by the demon in the purple gem, for only by the casting of this powder could the beast be driven away before its time. The ingredients of the powder were named in the Book of Aben, that manual written by an old Hyperborean wizard, who in his day had dealt with ultra-mundane spirits akin to the demon of the comet, and had also been the owner of the ring. Having compounded the powder, I stored it in a bag of viper skin, and soon after I had finished my preparations, the 2 men-at-arms and the horses came to my house, as had been stipulated. The men were stout and tested warriors, clad in chainmail and carrying spears and swords. I mounted the 3rd horse, a black and spirited mare, and we rode forth from Zims toward Paragon, taking a direct and little-used way which ran for many miles through the werewolf-haunted forest. My companions were taciturn, speaking only in brief answer to some question, and this pleased me, for I knew that they would maintain a discreet silence regarding that which might occur before dawn. Swiftly we rode, while the sun sank in a redness as of welling blood among the tall trees, and the darkness wove its thickening webs from bough to bough, closing upon us like some inextricable net of death and evil. Deeper we went into the brooding woods, and even I, the master of sorceries, trembled a little at the knowledge of all that was abroad in the darkness. Undelayed and unmolested, however, we came to the abbey at late moonrise, when all the monks except the aged porter had retired to their dormitory. The porter who had received word of our coming would have admitted us, but this, as it happened, was no part of my plan. Saying I had reason to believe that the beast would re-enter the abbey that very night, I told the porter my intention of waiting outside the walls to intercept it, and merely asked him to accompany us in a tour of the building's exterior, so that he could point out the various rooms. This he did, and during the course of the tour he indicated a certain high window in the second story as being that of the Abbot Theophile's chamber. The window faced the forest, and I remarked the abbot's rashness in leaving it open. This, the porter told me, was his invariable habit. Behind the window we could see the glimmering of a taper, as if the abbot were keeping late vigil. We had committed our horses to the porter's care. After he had conducted us around the abbey and had left us, we returned to the space beneath Theophile's window and began our long watch in silence. Pale and hollow as the face of a corpse, the moon rose higher, swimming above the somber oaks and pines, and pouring a spectral silver on the gray stone of the abbey walls. In the west, the comet flared among the lusterless signs, veiling the lifted sting of the scorpion as it sank. We waited hour by hour in the shortening shadow of a high pine, where none could see us from the abbey. When the moon had passed over, falling westward, the shadow began to lengthen toward the wall. All was mortally still, and we saw no movement, apart from the slow changing of the light and shade. Halfway between midnight and dawn, the taper went out in Theophile's cell, as if it had burned to the socket, and thereafter the room remained dark. Unquestioning, with ready spears, the two men-at-arms companioned me in that vigil. Well, they knew the demonian terror which they might face before dawn, but there was no trace of trepidation in their bearing, and knowing much that they could not know, I held in my hands for instant use the bag of viper skin that contained the hyperborean powder. The men stood nearer than I to the forest, facing it perpetually according to a strict order that I had given. But nothing stirred in the fretted gloom, and the skies grew paler, as if with morning twilight. Then, an hour before sunrise, when the shadow of the great pine had reached the wall and was climbing toward Theophile's window, there came the thing which I had anticipated. Very suddenly it came, and with no warning of its nearness, a horror of hellish red light, swift as a kindling wind-blown flame, that leapt from the forest gloom and sprang upon us where we stood stiff and weary from our night-long vigil. One of the men-at-arms was borne to the ground, and I saw above him in a floating redness as of blood the black and serpentine form of the beast. A round and snakish head without ears or nose was tearing at the man's armor with sharp innumerable teeth, and I heard the teeth grate and clash on the linked iron as I stepped forward and flung the powder of Avon at the beast. The second man-at-arms, undaunted, would have assailed it with his spear, but this I forbade. The floating powder, fine as a dust of mummia, seemed to dim the bloody light as it fell, and the beast relinquished the fallen man, writhing away like a burnt serpent from the fire. Its members and body were loathfully convulsed, and the thing seemed to change horribly beneath our gaze, undergoing an incredible metamorphosis. Moment by moment it took on the wavering similitude of man, like a werewolf that returns from his beasthood, and the red light grew dimmer, and the unclean blackness of its flesh appeared to flow and swirl, assuming the weft of cloth, and becoming the folds of a dark robe and cowl such as are worn by the Benedictines. Then from the cowl a face began to peer, glimmering pale and thin in the shadow. and the thing covered its face with sooty claws that were turning into hands and shrank away from me as I pressed upon it, sprinkling it with the remainder of the powder. Now I had driven it against the abbey wall, and there, with a wild, despairing cry that was half human, half demoniac, the thing turned from me and clawed frantically at the gray stone as if it would climb toward the abbot's window in that monstrous fashion that had been its wont. Almost for a breath it seemed to run upward, hanging to the wall like a bat or a great beetle. But the change had progressed too far, and it dropped back in the shadow of a pine, and tottering strangely as if with sudden mortal weakness, fell to the ground and lay huddled in its monkish garments like a black nightbird with broken vans. The rays of the gibbous moon, sifting thinly through the boughs, lay cold and cadaverous on the dead face, though the body was immersed in shadow. And the face, even as I had expected, was that of the abbot Theophile, who had once been pointed out to me in Seams. Already the peace of death was upon him, and horror had left no sign on the shut eyelids and the sealed lips. And there was no mark on the worn and haggard cheeks, other than that which might come from the saintly rigor of prolonged austerities. The man-at-arms who had been struck down by the beast was unharmed, though sorely bruised beneath his mail. He and his fellow stood beside me saying naught, and I knew that they had recognized the dead abbot. So while the moon grew gray with the nearness of dawn, I made them swear an awful oath of secrecy, and enjoined them to bear faithful witness to the statement I must make before the monks of Paragon. Then, having settled this matter, so that the good renown of the holy Theophile should rest unharmed, we aroused the porter and acquainted him with the abbot's lamentable death. And we told this story, averring that the beast had come upon us unaware, and had gained the abbot's cell before we could prevent it, and had come forth again, carrying Theophile with its snakish members as if to bear him away to the sunken comet. Then, by means of a wizard powder, I had routed the unclean beast, compelling it to relinquish its prey. And the thing had vanished in a cloud of sulphurous fire and vapor, but Theophile had died from the horror of his plight while the beast was descending the wall. His death, I said, was a true martyrdom, and would not be in vain. The beast would no longer plague the country or bedevil Paragon, since the use of Hyperborean powder was a sure exorcism. This tale was accepted by the brothers, who grieved mightily for their good abbot. Indeed, the tale was true enough in its fashion, for Theophile had been innocent and was wholly ignorant of the foul change that had come upon him nightly in his cell, and the deeds that were done by the beast through his loathfully transfigured body. Each night the thing had come from the comet to assuage its hellish hunger, and being otherwise impalpable and powerless, it had used the abbot for its energumen, molding his flesh in the image of some obscene monster from beyond the stars. After Theophile's death, the beast was seen no more in Averoigne, and the murderous deeds were not repeated. And in time the comet passed to other heavens, fading slowly, and the black terror it had wrought became a varying legend, even as all other bygone things, and they who read this record in future ages will believe it not, saying that no demon or malign spirit could ever have prevailed upon true holiness. Indeed, it were well that none should believe the story, for strange abominations pass evermore between earth and moon and athwart the galaxies, and the gulf is haunted by that which it were madness for man to know. Unnameable things have come to us in alien horror and shall come again, and the evil of the stars is not as the evil of earth. Hey family, a very big thank you to Clark Ashton Smith for allowing me to narrate such an awesome story. Be sure to check out their Creepypasta fandom profile for more of their awesome works. If you would like to support us and make a donation, I'd be very much appreciative. I do have PayPal and a Buy Me a Coffee account. Be sure to also check out our merch store. There are plenty of items and designs to choose from. If you enjoyed this video, then why not check out the next one? Here, on the right-hand side. You can also follow us. All my socials and all my other links are contained within the Linktree link below. Take care, everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful and peaceful night. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.